Traditionally, boxing's been a sport for the underdogs. It's about nobody's becoming somebody, or at least feeling like somebody. In a lot of ways, the sport's about ego. It's about legacy. For me, my ego died a long time ago. I'm not here making this guide as a know-it-all or a tough guy or the world's greatest coach. In fact, in a lot of ways, being here on YouTube has been kind of a weird thing for me because all the other coaches speak about resume. They speak about achievement. I don't have any of that. All I can do is keep proving my knowledge and show you what I do in the hopes that I can earn your respect and earn your views. Now, like I said, my boxing story isn't about achievement and resume. In fact, it's about a lot of negative things, right? It's about lack of opportunity. It's about failure. It's about struggling with health conditions on my own. It's about loneliness. So I ended up having to train alone a lot of the times. Even when I had a coach, it didn't really feel like I was being coached. So I would have to take information and figure out ways to maximize that in order to put myself in the best position to win when I did have an opportunity to compete. So I don't even really know sometimes why I'm involved in the sport today. There's times where I definitely feel like I should not be involved in it anymore. But the thing that keeps me here is the kids that I train. I am not somebody who can point to this champion or that champion and say, I created that person. What I do is I work with beginners, people who come from really underprivileged situations, and I coach them for free, and I try to give them opportunities that I didn't have. I guess that's why I'm still in the sport. It's to serve some version of justice to a young version of myself that didn't have it, right? So something I noticed in boxing as a kid and as I grew up into it that I knew was going to be a problem is the fact that all the free locations that you would learn boxing, all those free programs, those are all shutting down. And we can blame it on a slew of things. We can blame it on things like inflation. We can bring this into a political direction. I'm not going to do any of that. It is what it is now, and we have to figure out how to move forward. So what I'm doing here with this guide is I'm trying to package all the responsibilities that a coach would normally take over for somebody or on somebody's behalf. And I'm trying to teach you how to coach yourself. I'm giving you all the tools you need to put yourself into the best situation. And I learn these tools through trial and error and out of necessity. So if you're a young guy or a young girl and you want to be successful in this sport, I have a lot of things to tell you about how I failed to get there and why that happened. But I also have a lot of really good lessons for you to take from, draw from, and build upon. So if you're that kid or even maybe young adult, I want you to take what I have here and build upon it so you can help yourself achieve what I couldn't. So if you're listening, this guide is for you. So with that said, let's get into a couple of problems that you're going to face when you're training alone. And there's two problems that really will destroy, they will make or break your ability to do this correctly. The first problem is that you are isolated from a second pair of experienced eyes to tell you what you are and are not doing right and wrong. So in other words, you end up living in an echo chamber and you can create bad habits that you don't recognize, you're not able to change, and you keep building off those bad habits and they become part of your fighting style. And the other thing is when you're in your own echo chamber, it's easy for the isolation to kind of give you a bigger ego than you should otherwise have, or think that you're doing better or maybe even worse than you really are. The other problem, which is a very significant problem when you're training alone most of the time, is the best thing you can do is simulate human intentions. So what do I mean by this? The reason why your shadow boxing didn't carry over to sparring the way you wanted it to was because it's the way that your brain perceives what's happening. It becomes overloaded. It becomes overstimulated because you're not exposed to a dynamic environment enough. Now, if I'm losing people here, how do you simulate somebody trying to beat the hell out of you? It's not very easy. You kind of have to live it. However, I have developed some things that you're going to see in this video that I don't see anybody else talking about, and I'm not saying I'm up with these. I'm just saying when I thought of them, these are what I figured out were the best solutions to that problem. When I did have a sparring partner, I would write down absolutely everything that happened, how I felt, where I did fail, where I did succeed. And I started trying to problem solve where my struggle points were. And most of the time it wasn't mechanics, it was applying the mechanics. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break down coaching yourself into 7 categories. These categories are the responsibilities a coach has over a fighter. When you do not have a coach, you are responsible for all 7. And this framework, if you follow this, will help you achieve greatness. But this is what I wish I had when I was younger. So let's get into these categories, starting with category 1, mechanics. Mechanics are what most people think of when they think of traditional boxing training. This is your technique, the way you throw punches, the way you slip. This is the moves, the form. This is your footwork. This is heavy bag work. I mean, this is double end bags. Everything that you could think of boxing training related, most of the time falls under mechanics. The good news is that as a solo boxer, this is the category you have most control over. Some problems that you're going to face in this category, or common traps, is yes, you're obviously going to blend mechanics in with other categories without realizing it. And this is not wrong. This is a normal thing. But if you only focus on the mechanics of those situations, you're going to lose a lot of value. The bigger issue here is directly related to mechanics. Bad habits go unchecked and become part of your permanent technique. Or when you're hungry for knowledge, it's easy to skip the basics and chase advanced moves, or you saw Tyson do one thing or you saw Floyd do another. And before you know it, you've built your foundation on stuff that is not actually usable in real situations because you don't understand the fundamentals. Another problem is kind of funny, and it develops over time. It's boredom for training. Boxing training becomes very monotonous, and if you don't understand the bits, pieces, and components of boxing, it's very easy for the training to become stale. In order to keep it fresh, you have to take your problems and break them down into smaller chunks. So when we talk about solutions, the way forward is to break problems into small, manageable pieces. You start simple and you master the foundations. Another thing is you can film yourself and be brutally honest. If you find flaws, try and fix them. If you cannot find flaws, use a second pair of eyes. You can also break mechanics down into micro drills that turn small details into fully executable drills, and this will sharpen your technique and also keep training fresh. But there is enough information online that you can learn pretty much anything in boxing and how to do it properly. But one of the things that happens is you think you understand mechanics, and then something will pop up later in your boxing career that show you that your mechanics aren't as sound as you want them to be. So an easy example of this would be, let's say you know how to stay low, or you know how to sit on your punches when you're punching in combination, but when you're fighting a tall opponent, you notice your mechanics start to get a little bit upright as you're throwing in combination. Your chin starts to rise because you're physically looking up at somebody. These are things that you can fix through identifying and doing proper mechanics training, but some of those things don't come out to you until it's too late. So having a good experienced pair of eyes, it helps things like that stop from becoming habits and getting worse. Now, reaction training is what takes your mechanics from a static, safe environment and converts them to a dynamic, live one. This category really exists to solve one of the biggest problems you have when you're training alone, and that's you have no human stimulus to react to, or maybe you don't very often. When you're a beginner and you first try to apply your mechanics training to sparring, for example, you'll notice that you zig instead of zag a lot. Essentially, what's going on is a form of cognitive overload. Your brain is kind of stuttering, trying to find which correct mechanical response to apply to that situation. Usually as a beginner, you make the wrong decisions or you choose late. This type of training tries to solve that issue even without a sparring partner. I had the same problem when I was forced to train alone as a kid. There was periods in my life where I was sparring frequently, and then there was parts where it was really rare. And I wanted to be able to juice every little bit out of training that I could. Like just squeeze every bit of value from a sparring session so the next time I got one, I would improve. Some problems you're going to face within this category is there is no solution that is a replacement for the real thing. You can even cheat these drills, even if you have these drills dialed in pretty good. Now, training mechanics alone means you're always in control and you decide what you want to throw, how fast, how much of it, or what the conditions are. And real fighting just doesn't work like that. You decide to do a defensive maneuver when it's comfortable for your body and you're balanced enough to do it. You decide to throw punches when you feel like you have the energy to do it. Even if you're trying not to do this, the human body falls into this pattern. That's why when you get across from a live opponent, you get drained so much quicker. A live opponent is going to break you out of that rhythm because it's not just your brain having a say, it's theirs having a say. With this type of training, we're trying to break your rhythm and trying to make sure your mechanics are good, even if a bad situation arises. So I came up with a lot of training methods to try to figure out how to do this and how to conquer this issue. And did I succeed perfectly all the time? No, but I do know for a fact I improved. So these are the methods I used from the worst to the best. The first one we're going to start out with is the worst, and that's light reaction training. You can have a partner switching between colors, or you can have a pre-programmed device that switches between colors. And when those colors change, it means to react to it in a specific way. So for me, in this scenario, you'll see when the light turns red, I pivot. How quickly you do that or how quickly you train that after the light turns red helps train your brain to, okay, I see a stimulus, I need to enact this move. Now, this doesn't fully replace unpredictability, but it does help you decide how to react under pressure and how those reactions or mechanics look. Now, there's all sorts of solutions for this, and I'm not saying they all work. Some of them are kind of gimmicky, but if you add this to your training, you might find that it gives you a mental benefit that you did not have before. The next kind of training, which is really effective, especially in shadow boxing, is randomized audio cues or beeps. There's interval apps or YouTube videos that have unexpected beeps, and when you're shadow boxing with these beeps, it serves as a really good surprise to switch between offense and defense. So sometimes you'll be caught mid-combination or maybe off balance or in between movements, and this is really useful because this is what happens when you're really sparring. The weakness of this method is it lacks a visual cue, so you don't get to fully simulate a live opponent. But again, none of these methods really do. I think to get the most out of this training, what you want to do is you want to stay in a consistent pressure of being offensive, trying to win the fight. You're constantly punching, you're constantly moving. And when you hear that random beep, that serves as a cue that an opponent is attacking back. You'll see you have to react to those cues, and it's not always comfortable. This is kind of more similar to a real life situation than shadow boxing and just deciding in your mind when it's time to be defensive. It sort of thrusts you to do so when you're uncomfortable, and that's what we're trying to train, how to become comfortable in uncomfortable environments. The next method is even better, and this is definitely one I used as a kid, and that's recorded audio of actual fights, but it's your audio. Let me explain. What I mean is, say you have a fighter that you're watching, and that fighter's throwing combinations. You're going to use a audio recording app, and you're going to literally say your combinations or their combinations, and you're going to record their combinations using the punching number system. So again, a jab is a 1, your straight punch is the 2. So if it's 1, 1, 2, you're going to say that into the recording app. You're going to record these in rounds, and then you're going to react to them. But now we have apps, right? We have text-to-speech apps, and you can use these, and they will make you so much better.
3. Reset. Get ready. 3. 4. Reset. Get ready. 4. Reset. Get ready. Ready. 4. Reset. Get ready. 6. 6. Reset. Get ready. 5. Reset. Get ready. 1, 2, 1. Reset. Get ready. 1, 1, 4. Reset. Get ready. 2, 1,
And when you train with these recordings, it's somewhat unpredictable. As you'll see in a couple of these videos, the app might say 1, 2, 3, meaning 1, 2, 3, and it throws these combos at you at times where you're not expecting it. So during your shadowboxing, you have to react to it. Now, the advantages to this is it gives you a realistic pacing and a semi-unpredictable flow. It really keeps you mentally engaged. But the weaknesses is the combos shouted out sometimes take longer than they would in real life, and it's hard to replicate situational nuances, meaning distances, angles, body positioning. So defensively, you have to select maneuvers that would most be likely to cover both. The last method exists today because of YouTube or things like YouTube, and you need to take advantage of channels like Precision Striking that give you actual visual stimulus to react to. So there's virtual sparring, there's virtual pad work. Utilize those if you don't have somebody doing it for you. Now, again, these are still imperfect because you don't feel the danger or any consequences when you fail, but they're an excellent supplement when you don't have it. None of these methods are as good as the real thing. Nothing replaces a live human being or a live coach, but these methods will help you if you do not have access to those things all the time. If you ignore this category, you risk the possibility of not being able to bridge the gap between mechanics in static safe environments and mechanics in dynamic ones. So the next category or responsibility your coach would have that you have to do for yourself is category 3, scenario or situational based training. If your reaction drills show you where you break, scenario training is showing you where you fix them and how you fix them. Some problems that you're going to experience in this category is you won't know what to work on if you never stress test yourself and your weaknesses stay invisible. So what I mean is if you don't have somebody to spar with ever, you're really probably not going to be able to get to this point. Another issue is if you overdo this category, you will end up choreographing your moves, which is not going to work. We're not trying to choreograph things. We're trying to train adaptability, and we're trying to train mechanics to draw from when those situations arise. Another problem that you're going to face is if there's no coach, there's no diagnosis. What I mean by that is coaches or experienced eyes will find patterns before you will alone. Now you have to become the one who diagnoses things as well as doing them. Now, the solutions of scenario-based training are kind of cool because I've laid these out in an easy-to-follow pattern. You have to discover, you have to decompose, you have to rebuild, and you have to verify. Discover means to use your reaction drills or your sparring, and you're going to allow the failures you have to come to the surface. So after you record those failures and you understand where they are, you have to decompose them. That means break them down into their atomic structures. I believe, at least I'm pretty sure, that there are 7 main building blocks to any form of combat. And how I came up with them is recognizing that most things that happen are actually subcategories of these categories. You're going to try to attack somebody, you're going to defend an attack, you're going to counterattack or counter in general, you're going to feint or fake attack, bluff attack, all the same thing. You're going to try to reposition, you're going to try to retreat, or you're going to try to smother. Smother basically in other forms of combat would just be null. Both sides get no action or no progress towards their goals. Anybody in the comments, if you can find or figure out a scenario which doesn't fit into those categories, let me know. But the truth is any form of combat, I really think falls into these. So all these things kind of break down into those components, and boxing is no different. Identifying these key components are going to help you identify the broad category of where you're failing. As long as you can decompose what's happening into these steps in their subcategories, you will be able to solve any issue that arises in boxing. The next thing to do is, after you've recognized which one of those, or maybe a mixture of those atoms, are the issue, you need to rebuild. And you're going to rebuild by designing micro drills that isolate these atoms or these building blocks, and you're going to train them under controlled stress. The next thing to do after you train them is you have to retest them, and this is where verify comes in. This loop of discover, decompose, rebuild, and verify is exactly what your coach does, whether they know it or not. And if you don't have a coach, it's your responsibility. Boxing or winning fights is actually about winning mini exchanges that make up a round, and then those rounds make up a fight. What you're trying to do is you're trying to win exchanges more often than the other person. When you find failures, you'll find places where the exchange didn't go that well, or maybe something happened and you had a failure in one of those key areas. Once you're able to identify what those areas are, you can build a drill around repairing them or creating scenarios to repair them. So one of the drills that I use, I call a complex exchange drill. If I identify an area or anywhere where myself or a fighter goes wrong, and I can repair the mechanics of it so the exchange would have went better the next time around. Now, when you learn to blend all these atoms together, or that most flowing forms of exchanges are multiple pieces of these atoms combined, in other words, like you can layer these things. And when you learn how to layer these things, you can make really cool drills off of that. Again, we're not trying to choreograph things. We're trying to get our brain into a position where we understand where things are going to fail and we understand the solution to make them better and stronger. Now, the verification process and making sure that our complex exchange drills are working is you bring those situations into sparring, you record your sparring, and you determine if the drill is working or not, if you ran through it enough times for it to work. There's tons of ways to do these complex exchange drills. I'm not going to go through them all, but I'm going to give you some examples here on camera. And you have to take these building blocks and make these exchange drills for yourself. So reaction training finds the wound, and scenario training performs the surgery. So now on to category 4, which is strength and conditioning. And strength and conditioning is one of those things that everybody thinks that they get right, but there is whole entire professions dedicated to, and they're dedicated for a reason. There's tons of great information online, and some of it is world class, and it can kind of make people feel like they know more than they really do. But most programs you see are designed for other sports or people of different needs. Boxing is very unique. Even if you find strength and conditioning stuff dedicated specifically to boxing, if you adopt it, you risk the chance that it might not work for you or your unique situation. If you get strength and conditioning wrong, you don't just underperform, you could break your entire training program. The problems that you're going to mainly face within this category is misapplied programming, CNS overload, meaning central nervous system overload. Most people do not know when they are training too much until it is too late. Other problems include not collecting baselines or having no feedback to base things off of, bad timing, and confusion. So let me explain some of these. Misapplied programs means copying routines from other sports like powerlifting, CrossFit, endurance running, whatever, and trying to make it fit boxing. This could lead to outcomes that you did not expect. So yes, improving your general strength is very important, and I am a proponent that people should do that, but you need to do it in the off season. When it is time to have a fight camp, your random strength and conditioning program is not going to work in this situation, especially bodybuilding ones or maximal strength things. It just increases the risk that you're going to get injured and minimizes your chances of peaking. So this gets into central nervous system overload. And that's the fact that boxing already places a heavy demand on your central nervous system. So when you add poorly timed maximal strength work, you'll just sap your speed or power and recovery, and it just turns into a mess. And what I mean by no baselines is if you don't test and track things, you can't tell whether the program helps or destroys your performance. So you really need to figure out how you're going to capture baselines, what baselines you want to capture, and having a program that gradually exposes you to peak at the right time. Now, the solutions for all these issues is to think in phases, right? So in the off season, you're trying to build general strength. If you're trying to move up a weight class, the time to do that is when you don't have a fight coming up. So You want to lift heavier in those times. You increase structural capacity at those times. When you're in fight camp, what you're trying to do is you're trying to turn existing strength into power, like explosive power. Now, another thing that people have is they think boxing is a cardio sport. This is not true. Boxing is a power sport with a cardio backdrop. Your cardiovascular conditioning is extremely important, and you want to have a large gas tank. But boxing knockouts don't happen because someone jogged longer than somebody else. But for some reason, the general public thinks that's how it works. As a general rule of thumb, and again, I'm avoiding giving you a specific program because everybody is so unique and their genetics are so unique. Getting this right is kind of difficult. So what you really want to do for boxing a lot of the times, and what they're finding out, meaning they, scientists and science, what it's figuring out is high intensity interval training that is boxing specific is more effective than just long steady state cardio. And this is very true amongst the amateurs because in the amateurs, they're 3-round fights, right? So why would you do this long steady state jog and then the fight is more like a sprint? So what you want to do as a general rule of thumb is you want to do things like sprinting. Heavy bag sprints is a really good one that's boxing specific. And you want to gradually increase the load over time during fight camp. So you might start fight camp and you could do 20 seconds on in a heavy bag sprint and 20 seconds it takes you to recover before being able to do your next one at 100% capacity. What you want to do is you want to try to elongate the time that you are under the workload and decrease the time that you need to recover from the workload. Again, this all has to fit in a way where it's not frying your central nervous system and you're able to do your regular boxing training. This is a very in-depth, important category and you have to get it right. If you don't know what you're doing, simplify your training program as much as possible and build off of that. Next is tactical and strategic training. Now, normally tactics and strategies are split. The coaches kind of handle the big picture and the fighter handles the in-ring execution. But when you're training alone, you kind of have to learn how to do all 3 layers of it, and it's only going to help you anyways. So what are the 3 layers that are responsible to you now? It's strategic, operational, and tactical. Strategic means this is how you plan to win a fight. Operational means how do I break my plan down into phases and adapt it as a fight unfolds? Tactical means the actual moves you're executing during the fight. You know, you might jab or slip. Those are tactical. So without a coach, you can't afford to leave these layers to chance. If you don't build systems for them, you'll fight on ego or instinct. This isn't always a bad thing, but it's a gamble. Now, some problems you're going to face in this category is most fighters with no coach never think past tactics. They kind of just react to things as they unfold. It's not necessarily a bad thing if you have proper mechanics and you've done the other categories we talked about, but it doesn't put you in the best chance to win. The next issue is ego generally blinds fighters from being able to scout effectively. So if you're watching your opponent per se in a previous fight, you're more likely as a fighter with a large ego to be overconfident and overlook some of the things that that fighter does correctly. And you'll think that you can handle them because who can beat you? You're the best ever. You know, like Tyson had a quote, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Now, this is true, but there's many examples where this wasn't the case. There's so many fighters, and people forget about this, like Ali, Mayweather. Another really good example of this, and I really want you to study him, is Andre Ward. That is an example of somebody who usually has a strategy and executes it throughout the course of a fight. Now, Ali did the same thing. So, yes, you could have the ignorant outlook of, yeah, if I hit this guy in the mouth, his strategy is going to fall apart. That could be true. It could also be true he hits you in the mouth and your strategy falls apart. Or it could be true that he hits you in the mouth and you are prepared enough to make adjustments. Another problem is without a second set of eyes, it's hard to stay objective and you either overestimate yourself or you spiral into doubt. Again, fighting is an emotional thing and we're going to hit that in the next category. And the biggest issue of all is if you're the person in the fight, you can't implement strategy, operations, and tactics as one person. Most of the time, it takes teamwork. In a fight, you're going to get tunnel vision, and it's easy to forget your strategy and sort of get lost in the chaos. So here are some solutions. One of the things that you want to do is you want to learn how to do strategic level planning, or what is your plan to win. You do this by doing recon, studying opponents, understanding the different types of fighters there is, pressure fighters, counter punchers, outboxers, all sorts of different things. You need to understand those types of fighting styles. And the next thing you need to do is you need to identify the weaknesses of those styles and how those flaws interact with their strengths and weaknesses. So you want to boil your findings down to a simple 3-point bullet. How you want to start, how you want to win rounds, and what's your fallback when it's not working. Now, at an operational level, what you need to know is about phases and adaptation. You need to break strategies down into phases and then execute in sparring or fights to gain experience doing this. So I would say sparring more so than fights to gain experience. You will get better at this over time when you intentionally have a strategy and you try to stick to it in sparring, and you take notes on what threw you off of that strategy. That means knowing how you plan to win, how you plan to enact that, and then actually enacting it. Fighters who learn this don't just learn to fight harder, they learn to fight smarter. This is what we refer to as RingIQ. The next category is your mental training and your psychological training. This is an extremely hard category for me to create, but I know it exists. If you look at this from just the sports side, it could mean intimidation tactics, mind games, and sure, that's one piece of it, but it's not the entire picture. What I'm talking about goes much deeper. Most boxers come into the sport with some kind of baggage. That's why they're boxers in the first place, right? Sometimes it's dealing with anger or pain, something to prove. That's why emotional regulation becomes so important in this sport. When you have a coach, often it becomes like a second father or your actual father if you don't have a father figure to begin with. And a father's job is to raise human beings with emotional control, because some of the worst decisions both in and out of the ring are made from a place of raw emotion or anger. Now, I'm not asking you to remove your emotions. I'm asking you to learn to control them. In the ring, if you're put together, you can make calculated decisions. But if you're too emotional, you get picked apart. And that's why this category matters so much. The way we should probably teach this is through stories, because explaining this from like an academic angle would be boring and most fighters are just going to lose touch. So let's go through some stories. Now, I once had a young fighter who trained himself for like 4 years before he came to me. He had it all. He had reach, speed, power, toughness, everything I could ask for in an athlete he had. His problem was he struggled to regulate his emotions. One day he told me some problems that were happening at home, and I thought we talked about them. I thought we had them under control, but apparently the next morning they all blew up. And I had a strong urge to walk my dog for some reason. I don't know why at this moment I had it, but it was a Saturday afternoon, and I just decided I needed to walk my dog. And fortunately I did, because I found him there and he had mentally broke. He was in a really bad mental state. I mean, I'm not going to tell you the details. It's not for me to share, and I don't even like having to share this story as it is. Even telling you that much information, in my opinion, it almost feels like it's too much. All you need to know is I brought this person to my house, offered them food, listened to everything that they were going through, helped them come up with strategies to regulate their emotions, and when they were ready to do so, I brought them back home. Now, again, I don't tell this story to say I saved him or take some kind of credit for this. The point is if you don't have anybody in your life to help you regulate these emotions, it's not easy to do so for yourself. I related to him because I was once an angry young man. And even today, I'm still a work in progress. I mean, I failed in this. Sometimes I let the emotions of my fighters get me emotional, and I do things that I shouldn't do. So every single day is a battle to control it, and it'll become easier over time the more you practice it. Now, another story where I was successful is I was home cooking with my wife, and I hear frantic pounding on my door. I mean, it was it was kind of scary because it was one of my younger fighters and they were screaming for help. Apparently there was a grown man at the park and he was threatening kids. And, it was one of those situations where there's no time to call the police because the police response time is too slow. Something I've learned in life is nobody's coming to save you. You have to figure it out. You are on your own in a lot of ways. And I know that's uncomfortable, but it's the truth. So I had no clue what I was walking into. This guy could have had weapons. He had a group of people with him. But all I knew is I had to go down there and protect the kids. And the truth is I did not go down there with the mindset that I was going to fight. I would have if I had to, but the key here was to use emotional control. Practice what I preach. I walked straight up to the guy and he was visibly upset. He was avoiding eye contact with me, and I tried to check his hands to make sure he didn't have any weapons on him. And then when I realized he was kind of barehanded, I reached out my hand and I said, "Hey, I'm Ricky. I'm the local boxing coach. Some of the kids came to me and said that you were upset. Is there anything I can do to help you?" And it completely shifted this guy's energy. Now, I could have gone down there aggressive and made it worse, but staying composed and de-escalating the situation was much more valuable. And I couldn't have done that if I didn't practice emotional control, because the old me would not have approached it that way. So here's the real question. How do you regulate yourself when no one's there to teach you how to do it? For me, when I didn't have anybody, I suffered, but eventually I found ways to self-regulate through things like music, meditation, self-reflection. And it might sound cliche, but you need to figure out what that is for you. And you need to practice emotional regulation in and out of the ring, because success without it will be very difficult. Now, all this leads me to category 7, which is recovery and longevity. I'm going to make this short. If you lack guidance, it's very easy not to think about recovery or longevity in a positive way that's going to set you up for success. I feel like I get a little bit preachy with this, so I'm going to try not to do that because people are going to do what they want to do anyways. But at the end of the day, if you're choosing to party over sleep, it's going to catch up with you. If you're choosing to abuse substances or people, it's going to catch up with you. A lot of this category is about taking care of yourself and taking care of others around you. This not is only going to help you stay in the ring longer, but it's going to prolong your longevity, because if you make the right decisions, you better believe the business end of boxing is going to see that and think more highly of you as an investment. This category is maybe the most obvious, and people intuitively know what to do, but choose to not do the right thing anyways. So I'm not going to beat a dead horse. Go do you. Boxing is a massive responsibility. It's a responsibility even if you have a coach. If you're serious about it, you end up being the manager of your body, your mind, your training, your recovery, your lifestyle. And honestly, most people won't even meet a coach that can do all this for them. I know in my case, I've never been paid one dime to do any of the coaching I do, and I manage all this for multiple people every day. It's a lot. But if you don't have the opportunity to work with a good coach, or you don't have the financial resources, or you don't live in the locations it takes to be around some of these gyms, this is a decent blueprint or guideline of the things, the responsibilities that you need to do in order to become successful. Now, if you want to go deeper into boxing, I am building programs that I was going to sell, but honestly, I don't know if I should sell them. I don't know if I want to give them away either. The reason why I'm bringing this up is I guess it really determines on the reaction this video gets on what path I'm going to take with boxing. I don't know yet if I'm going to start to walk away from the sport more. I don't know yet if I could find a way to make money coaching, or if I even want to be involved in the bright lights and all the drama that goes on in professional boxing. So if this video gets the right feedback, I'm teetering with the idea of doing virtual coaching or in-person coaching. So you're just going to have to hit me up and ask me. But if you don't have the opportunity for that, I really want to make sure that you had all the skills and the responsibilities categorized and in one place to make sure that you're successful. So good luck to you. Keep training, stay smart, make good decisions, and I'll see you in the next video.